Welcome, club members, to our April meeting. In lieu of an actual meeting, we're going to have a virtual meeting, or we're going to try it anyway. Our Vice President, Suzanne's running the camera and come up with this idea of me doing a demo here in my shop that you can see live on April the 19th, in lieu of our regular meeting. I have a large walnut log that's been laying around my shop for years. Good time to cut into it and show you how we can convert just a rough log that somebody gives you or you found along the road, get it cut down and convert it to where you can get it on the lathe and turn something useful, like a nice round brown bowl. So I have already at this point taken a little handmade chopper that I have just to knock some of the loose bark off so that it doesn't interfere with the chainsaw. And I do have a nice 14-inch electric Makita chainsaw that I can use inside on especially nasty cold days. I can do it inside. Outside I'll use my gas one out on the deck, but for this time of year the electric one's great inside. We do have a clip following this of me doing the actual chopping of bark and cutting with the chainsaw. So at this point we've got it down to where it's manageable, that I can get it on a bandsaw, and I'll show you how I cut a nice round out of it. One more cut here. Next step we have is what I found most useful and helpful is I have masonite discs cut out of different size pieces of hardboard or masonite, marked what size they are, and with those I can lay them on the log and see what fits best on there. 11-inch right now looks pretty good. It leaves me a little area around at the cutoff, and I use cordless screwdriver and drywall screw. Fasten it down because it's pretty hard to write on there because you got unusual uneven surfaces. So by fastening it on there, I can take it straight to the bandsaw now, and we can cut it out. And I have a center mark, knowing where to mount it on the lathe. So here we go, onto the bandsaw. Raise that up high enough and clear all the way around. Probably wouldn't hurt to have some safety gloves on. It's still a little rough on the edges. Work a vacuum up. Makes it easy to follow close but not touch it. I have a 1/2-inch blade on, which is perfect for cutting the 11-inch diameter. and stop the bandsaw before you try to remove anything off the lathe, because you're dealing with heavy, cumbersome stuff. Nice piece of firewood. Might still be a little bit of useful wood out of there. Cordless drill and remove. Nice pattern. I'll take my trusty red crayon and put an extra red marker around it just so I don't lose where that center point is. Our next step is to drill a 3/8 diameter hole about 1 inch deep into the log that we can use it to mount on the lathe on a worm screw. So it's a fairly simple process. It works really well on most any size log, and we'll proceed right now with my cordless drill. I got the mark, center mark. Just guessing about a good inch deep. Carry it over to the lathe. Just to make it easier to take on and off, I'll wipe a little paraffin on the threads. There is a worm screw very similar to this that is in the chuck, and I have extras. So that's what's mounted in there. Pull this guy up here. And I'll lock it so I can get it really tight. Okay. That's one big rotten piece of wood. But we will bring the tailstock up. Let me take that one out and put another one in. That's a tailstock, and it's hitting pretty close to the center mark. A little extra insurance. Lock that down, and we're ready to go. Welcome back. We are have the walnut blank mounted on the lathe with a worm screw, the tailstock brought up for safety, extra insurance. And at this point, I will use a 5/8 bull gouge to rough it down, and I will turn a tenon on the bottom to about 3.5 inches, which is what my set of jaws that we'll put on the chuck will accommodate, and that'll be sufficient to hold a bowl of this size, about 11-inch diameter. So with that, I have my safety gloves on, my smock on. I'll put a face shield, and we'll commence turning at a slow speed, and I will speed it up as it gets rounder. But right now it's still pretty rough, so we'll go at a slow speed, and with variable speed it makes it very easy to increase the speed as it gets rounder. So here we go. as we round it down slightly, I can move the banjo and steady rest closer. We want to keep as close as we can to minimize any stress on you and the chisel. So we'll move it, but we always want to shut off our lathe before we move the banjo. You can see how much we've taken off so far. We need to round it all the way up around, cut in here for the tenon. We're running about 400 RPM right now. I'll be able to boost it up 100 each time I take some more wood off. Time to move the banjo a little closer at this point as I've removed an inch or so more wood off. As you notice, I'm holding the gouge with my left hand as I'm pushing push cut away, bracing it against my hip and using my body to push into it, not just relying upon my arms, because it's still quite a rough cut. We got the tenon about the size. Right now I'm just riding the bevel, coming around, trying to get as clean and nice cut as I can. Keep coming up around until I get this final roundest cut. May have to do a little turnover on that to get rid of that. I don't want to take the bowl down to that small a diameter since we got some nice grain in the wood here. See what progress we've made so far. It's getting round. We'll need to take a little more off to try to remove that section right there. We'll still have a good sized bowl from there. I'm going to square up the tenon right now just so I can finish that up. I will use the Dan just to get a square shoulder for the chuck to fit onto. I did a slight undercut on the tenon because the jaws are a dovetail jaw, so that allows for a better grip, a tighter grip. And that will fit nicely right on there. Square up the bottom just a little bit more. Well, sneak into this screw. Still shaking the 500, so we'll keep it right there until I get some more wood removed off. Take a look, see how our progress. A little bit more. We'll get that off. One or two more cuts, and we'll have a nice, they call it a calabash quite often when the bowl rounds back around again. It's kind of a Hawaiian term for a bowl that they use or make. So that's what we can end up with here. A little more trimming there, a little more there. Just one teeny little flat, one more cut. We'll do that. We're trying to maintain a nice, smooth overall shape there, allowing enough for a flat bottom. I'm going to take 1 minute to hone my chisel for this last cut here. Right there. Okay, now that we've finished up rough turning the bowl with our roughing gouge, the next step that I use is a scraper. Many of the wood turners do use these. This is one that I made from a piece of high-speed blade now. It's held on with this set screw. It is drilled and tapped just into a piece of 1/2-inch cold rolled steel. The high-speed planer blade steel is very hard. Can't be drilled, so you can cut a slot with just a small cutoff wheel, and that allows it to slip over the threaded bolt and held in place that way. So I'll take it over to my grinder. I have a 80 grit CBN wheel and a slow speed grinder. I have a predetermined angled set, and it just takes just a couple light passes. I'm not looking to remove a lot of metal. But by doing that, it raises a little burr on the top edge. And that's what actually does the cutting, is it's a shear scrape off of that little edge. We'll put it back on and give it one more pass. Use that wrench often so I keep it in its designated holder. Put my face shield back on. Made a very slow, light, easy cut, that last cut, and I can tell it just shaved off a very fine ribbon of wood, which left it even cleaner surface, more and more of the bowl. Still a little bit in this wild grain, a little fuzz, a little tear, but that will sand. But for 3/4 of the bowl now is very nicely smoothed out. It's a wonderful tool. Highly recommend it. So the next step now is to take it off the lathe and screw it off the worm screw, and we'll chuck it into that tenon that we turned, and then we'll begin the hollowing process on the inside. Okay, now we have the bowl reversed around, and we have it onto the lathe, onto the chuck, larger jaws. They're about 3.5 inch, so we have just a nice tight fit around there. You want to get as close to being closed as you can. That gives it the most grip and grab on it. Not a lot of gap in between there. That's about perfect right there. It gives you most full grip of the jaws all the way around. So that's what I was striving for. And with that, and with the dovetail jaws, it's quite securely held on there. So now, using my same 5/8 bowl gouge, we'll start to cut here. And for this way, we're going to go from the outside down. You notice when it's doing the bottom, we went from inside to the out, but now we're going to go from outside in. That's due to the way the grain is on the wood. We want to be severing the grain going down. If you would be coming up, you would be going into the grain and you'd be tearing and fighting. So this way we're going to be going downhill into it. So we'll get a cleaner, better cut that way. Still pretty out of round on the face, so we'll true that up and then I'll start hollowing. Here we go. see what we got there. Got a pretty good flat surface. Got some really nice wild grain going through it all. So this will turn out to be a very beautiful bowl when we get her done. So now that we've got it pretty trued up a little bit, I can speed it up a little more. We'll get a little better cut. I'm still using my curved bar, which will help me as I go in. I can continue to bring the bar in, keep the bar as close to the wood surface as I can. And we'll just stop and double check. Even after that little bit of running, make sure it's all securely tight. Yes, feels good. There we go. Once again, I'll be anchoring it on there, riding a bevel on the way down, and I'll try to brace it against my body as much as I can and use the weight of my body to push it down in there, not just relying on my arms. I'll try to get as much control as we can. One little sideline here. A nice piece of walnut like this would lend itself to be cored out. They do have coring tools where I could core out that center section, save that wood and make a smaller bowl out of it. I do not have one, so right now we're just going to waste a lot of wood, make it into shavings, but in the future a nice piece of wood like this would lend itself to be cored out. So. Now I do often cut a little recess back. You could drill a hole in there also. You could put a Forstner bit in your tailstock and drill that out. It just makes it easier when you're coming down into there rather than trying to hit that dead center every time. If you have that little center removed, it just makes an easier cut in there. So, but I'll continue to just back cut it a little bit there, then do my cut down there. But you see going downhill, you're getting a very smooth, nice cut right through there. So we don't want to tear any more grain that requires any more sanding than we need to. So we'll continue hollowing. anchor bevel. You notice as we're starting with our handle way out here so that the bevel is contact with the wood. So once it starts in, we continue to follow it so the handle continues to come around the whole time. I'm trying to keep that bevel right there, right parallel, flat against the wood the whole time. See right there, it's on it. There all the way around, and it's following that same line all the way down till we get to there. As we get in deeper, I'll have to come out even more because we got to continue that bevel in the direction of the cut, which will be coming down. I may have to swivel my lathe out. I'm fortunate. Yes, I'm close to the wall, but my lathe head swivels out, so I may have to bring this out a little bit, so that I have enough angle of the tool to get down in there. We've got the inside hollowed out. I used basically two bowl gouges. My first 5/8 that I did the roughing with, and then to get into the center and to clean out more, I had to go to another 5/8 bowl gouge that has a much steeper grind to it. That allowed me to get past the rim and follow the right bevel all the way down, and this will take you all the way down to the bottom and still ride the bevel, whereas the steeper angle would not allow that because you'd be hitting the rim. So these two are very, you could probably do it all of this, just this one cuts a little quicker and removes more wood first. So that's why this is more of they call it a bottom feeder, or to finish up the bottom with. So once those are done, we've got quite a smooth surface in there, but I like to give it one more step before I sand. It would almost be ready for sanding right now, but to facilitate the sanding so you don't have to sand quite so much, there's usually a few tool marks, so I like to go to a scraper. One commercially available is this Crown by 1/2 inch solid steel scraper, rounded, and this will allow you to take a light finish cut around to remove any tool marks and any torn grain. Works well. I like to use one that I made. It's fairly easily made. Once again, you can either buy or make a piece of high-speed steel scraper on there. I had a 3/4 inch bar of steel that I ground a flat spot, drilled and tapped it to hold the cutter. Was able to weld it into a piece of 3/4 inch pipe, a leftover pipe clamp. Filled it full of lead shot and plugged the end so the lead shot wouldn't roll out. So it got some real weight to it. Dampens any vibration, and this allows me to get inside and scrape, and I can turn this one at a slight angle, and with the handle up I get a really nice shear scrape off that little burr edge that you get off a grinder. And to me this works better even than just a plain flat scraper. So I'll do a quick run over it with this, and then we'll go on to sanding, and I'll show 3 different steps, 3 different methods, 3 different ways to sand it. Sanding's not fun, but whatever you can do to make it life easier, better, quicker, I'm all for. So let me give a little demo with this. And by the way, the coughing you hear in the background is our wonderful Vice President, Suzanne, who's doing the videotaping, and she has just been coughing due to the walnut dust. It's not the COVID-19, so you don't have to worry. You're not going to get infected by watching this video. So let us proceed with this. Still running around 500, 550 RPM. this large enough bowl with the hard and soft grain in it, it still will vibrate some if I speed up. So we're running a little slower than normal, but it's still cutting pretty well. So once again, I've got the tool post up above center so that my handle is up, so that it'll be scraping and I'm tipping it. So I'm getting a shear scrape, and I'll just do a couple light passes, and that's all it'll take with this. So here we go. There was one continuous pass. I get a nice, smooth, even, take out any tool marks, any little slight bumps or ridges, and any torn grain. So maybe one more pass of this and I'll be ready for sanding. One more time. And I like the weight of this. It doesn't vibrate, it doesn't bounce on me. It gives very good tool control. Scraping, left some fine little shavings on the scraper, the high-speed steel with a little burr on it, pulls off just fine little shavings, which eliminates a lot of the sanding. Not necessary if you don't want to make trouble making one of these, but it just aids me in it, and I don't like to sand any more than anybody else, so that's why I do use this. A regular scraper would work, this just works a little better. So with that said, we can put this away and we'll go on to sanding. I know everybody likes to sand, some more than others, but we will stop our lathe. You always want to get the banjo out of the way because you don't want to get your fingers wedged between the tool rest and the wood. You want to have a free, clear opening at it. So we got a pretty nice, smooth, even surface there, but with a wild grain, it's going to require some sanding. Three basic ways. One is I have leftover rubber pads. You can use any kind of a mouse pad or leftover spongy rubber pad, and I use a little bit of contact cement and glue my sandpaper to it. This is about a 100, and I'll go up through the different grits. The advantage of this is it's flexible, the heat doesn't transfer to your fingers, and it gives you something to hang on to easily, and it'll last quite a while, and I use these quite exclusively on many different projects, but I'll show you just a little quick demo with this. I generally hang on to my right hand with my left hand just to help support it so that I can reach inside and give a nice sand around there. If you do it by your one hand, you could flop around and bounce in there, but steadying it with this definitely helps. So we'll start it up and do a little sand with this one. And yes, I do normally wear a mask when I'm sanding, but it's hard to talk with a mask on, and so I'm not going to sand a lot. It will take more than several passes to do this, but just those two passes left a much improved surface, but that works. You can do the whole bowl with that. I can do the outside also with it. If you have reverse, it's even better yet. I'll show you how nice that works. And by putting the lathe on reverse, the dust is going away from you. If you have a dust collector right there, you can see how nicely the dust goes away from you. One step with that. To improve it upon a little more, several companies make little handheld sanders. This one I happen to make myself. Somebody had an article in AUW how to do it. Piece of aluminum from Lowe's. epoxied a 1/4 inch bearing, 1/4 inch bolt in there, onto a piece of aluminum, glued some rubber pads on there, and I got a spongy pad that I can use the very easily available hook and loop 2-inch discs on there. This works nice because you can reach inside well, you know, have your hand inside there, and you can get a little more pressure with this, and I use this quite exclusively. So we'll fire this up and try it. Once again, not going to sand a lot. See how much dust is being produced, and I could reverse it, but you can do it this way too. And the beauty of these is that I have a board stuck to my bandsaw, or it could be to my lathe. It has all the grits of paper from 60, 80 up to 600. I can just very nicely peel that 100 off, stick the next grit on there, and just work my way through the grits. And that's how I quite often do a lot of my turning. A lot of my bowls are done this way, very quick and easy. And not fumbling for different sandpaper. But also, if you want to spend a little more money, pay these little money pits. Can't never have enough tools. One of the other items that I have is a right angle grinder that once again you can adapt it. They normally come with a 5/8 shaft on here, and most of those sanders are 1/4 inch shaft, which is designed to go in a drill. But if you get a 5/8 coupler, it screws on there. Put a 5/8 bolt into it, cut it off, and either set screw it or epoxy it in. Drill a 1/4 inch hole, and then you got to tap for a set screw to hold the little flexible 1/4 inch pad in there. So this works really well, even better yet than the hand one. So this guy with that extension allows you to reach in there. It's pretty hard to get a drill sometimes in there, but this guy here, and I got a handle to hang on to also. So I can work that in there. 2 hands work out there. So let me plug that in, and we'll give a quick demo of that. These run fairly fast, so I have it plugged into a variable speed reducer. It's for a router or other power tools. If you run it too fast, the discs fly off. So with that, I'm able to control the speed. But they do sell some of these also with their own variable speed. A lot of drills are. These particular one here isn't, so I have to use that. Let's see what happens here. Flower dust coming off of that one. Okay, once again, you want to wear a mask while you're doing this because it does produce a lot of dust. But if I go through all the sanding grits, I will have a very well sanded bowl sooner than later. But once the interior is sanded, most of the exterior will be sanded, then I'll reverse it and I'll show how we take the tenon off the bottom and decorate and finish off the bottom of the bowl. And after that, we'll put a finish on it, and we'll have a bowl ready to sell in the gallery or display proudly on your kitchen. This is the bowl after sanding through the grit, starting at 100 up through 600 grit, and then I wiped on 1 coat of Wipe On Poly by Minwax. It's the clear gloss. We'll let that dry, and we'll finish off the bottom, oil that, and then I will buff it. That's the next step process. But we're just showing this right now to show how much that curly walnut really pops when you put the oil on it. Okay, here we are. We've got the bowl all turned, sanded, and I did put 2 coats of oil on. I use a Minwax wipe-on poly. It's a good, hard, durable finish. It wipes on, doesn't leave any brush marks or any other dust specks, so it's a really nice finish that I like to use. Several different kinds of it out on the market, but this is what I get at Lowe's and use primarily in a lot of my pieces. Our next step is we have to remove the tenon off the bottom that we used to hold with the chuck. In the old days, we used to screw a faceplate on, and once you took that off, you had screw holes to fill or put a piece of felt over it. But now with the chucks, we have this nice tenon, which we can nicely remove, not have to worry about screw holes. So there's 3 basic ways to do it. The first way is a vacuum chuck. I do not have one, but you can have a vacuum motor that pulls a vacuum through. You have a padded chuck hollow here that would suck the bowl to the lathe, and that'll allow you to get to that and finish it up. Very nice system. I'll have one someday, not right today. The second method is called a jam chuck. Once again, it can be just any kind of block of wood that you could put in your chuck and put a pad over it. But in our library, Alan Lacer has a nice book on different accessories, and he came up with this neat system here. It's a collet type chuck I got through Grizzly with a 5/8 steel bar, just a basic pulley that you use on a motor, which allows you to glue a piece of hardwood and put a nice piece of rubber pad on there. This allows you to reach in deeper on deep bowls such as this, or even hollow forms. So once I made this, I use it quite exclusively, and I do have different length bars. I can go way out for a really deep hollow form. But we'll put this in and just show basically how it works. You just put that nice padded against there. You bring the tailstock up to that center point, and once you tighten it, it's held nicely in there and allows you to get most all of it turned away, but you won't be able to turn one little nub off. But after you've got everything turned and sanded, take it off the lathe, a sharp chisel or knife, and you can take that little nub off. Pretty easily done. But for today, to finish this one up, we're going to use the third method that I like to use. And it's called a coal jaws. It's mounted on a one-way large chuck, but there are separate jaws that you can buy that have these rubber grips on it, and as you tighten the chuck, it'll tighten around your bowl, hold it quite firmly, allow you to finish the bottom. So we're going to put this on and remove that tenon. Quite an infinite range of sizes you can get on here. Bring our tailstock up. Now that I have the bowl mounted into the coal jaws, we'll just go around carefully and not over tighten it, but we're getting good contact all the way around with these. These are an extension rubber. The normal ones are a little lower, but since this bowl curves down, I have to use these slightly longer ones to get a good purchase up onto the bowl better. So I think we're good there. Bring the tailstock up, just snug it on there just for a little insurance. I'll take it off eventually, but for right now. And then we'll get our banjo up close, give it a spin by hand. You always want to do that. Make sure that nothing's hitting. With this type of coal jaw, you're limited to about 1,000 RPM. They say it's best not to exceed that because you have such large extra hunks of metal and rubber spinning around here. So, but 1,000 still gives you plenty of RPM to trim that down. Today I'll use a Doug Thompson 3/8 detail gouge. I got pretty nice swept back wings on it, which will allow me to get in there and just cut that back. We'll slightly recess it so that it sits on a little rim. We don't want it dead flat, so we'll undercut it a little bit. So we'll do that with this, and then we'll sand a little bit, and I'll make a couple little marks in there. I usually do a couple little grooves about that far apart, which allows me a place to sign my bowl and put what type of wood it is. So with that said, we'll turn on our light and we'll fire up the lathe and see what we got here. That's pretty good speed there. I'm only around 600, but I'm not going to push it with that size bowl. We'll see what we can do here. Just keep the shavings out. I'll button this up a little farther. Want to take light cuts with this procedure. You don't want to pull that out of there by any means. So you come this far, we'll just be patient and light cuts make it happen. We have most of the wood cut away now, most of the tenon. I feel comfortable pulling the tailstock away, and we'll finish that little nub off there. Move our banjo a little closer. With the previous jam chuck, we wouldn't be able to remove that now. You would have to keep the tailstock up to it. But with the cold jaws holds it entirely, so we can completely finish the bottom. You don't want to go too deep at this point and make a funnel out of this beautiful bowl, so we will stop. And I'll take a straight edge and just hold it on there. And it does show that I'm undercut. It's the bowl will be resting just on these outer little rim, and it's recessed underneath there. It won't rock, so I feel pretty comfortable there. Maybe one more finish cut. Clean it up a little bit, and then we'll do a couple little lines and some sanding, and we'll be able to oil it and put it on the shelf. generally use a skew. We'll raise our rest up just a little bit, carefully. And we'll use the point of the skew to, I like to make a little bead right about there. Come over about a quarter, 3/8 inch. Give me a little place to write walnut and the date on it. So with that looks pretty good right there. You will have to sand that some, which I'll sand it and oil it, and I'd say we're all good to go. I'll take it off. Let's just see how it sits. Put it on our table. Sits nice, doesn't rock. You have one beautiful piece of walnut bowl with some really nice burly grain in there. I'll probably bring it to the club meeting with it oiled up and finish sanded on the bottom for when we resume our regular meetings again. So thank you much for watching and happy turning.